everyone. The goal of this call is to discuss over the credentials and skills schema. There has been a pull request that has been made by Ben Razer on the ceramic data models repo, which is in a pretty good spot. And then there's Stepa that has background in Web 2 and Web 3 credentials that extended that model. He will share about it as well. Then we have JPIC that is gonna go through a slide of how we are thinking of issuing badges in Decompass. And then anyone else that would like to share is more than welcome. So in the agenda, we were thinking of going through the current Web 2 taxonomy. If Stepa, you could give a few words on that.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Stepan or Stopa. I work on Deep Skills Protocol, and basically we're launching an application soon in about a month. But then in parallel, and that application will help DAOs to manage HR practices. So create projects, onboard contributors, and coordinate projects along the way. In parallel, we are working on the protocol, which would be Deep Skills Protocol, basically a decentralized professional identity profile where Deep Skills would be just one of the applications that can record data. Along with Deep Skills, that would be, and we're already working with many different protocols, Web3 protocols, Web2 systems, to basically give ability to create decentralized professional profile, and then that can enable many different use cases. Some of the more obvious ones are like finding a freelancer, assessing contributors, so people who want to join the DAO, but also it can be something more complicated, like, for example, credit scoring for DeFi, if you want to get under authorized loans, or meritocratic voting, where your votes are weighted by the skills or competencies that you have, or maybe your work history. So that's what we do. And I want to share a little bit about our approach, how we want to structure and how we want to architecture the protocol. The idea is that at the core, you have decentralized identity, which is owned and fully controlled by the user. So it's a DID, decentralized identifier, can be linked to any wallet or any public-private key pair that the customer control, or for simplicity, for simpler UX, it can be also hosted custodially. And then that DID can have a number of credentials that were issued to them, and issuers can be them. So you can have self-issued credentials, such as just an attestation. Here's I'm a designer, here's my work, here's link to Dribble or Behance, and this is just my profile. It can be issued by authority. So for example, let's say a certificate or some attestation issued by a DAO, or maybe a certification center or assessment company. And lastly, it can be peer issued. So something like a coordinate or source cred or colony reputation. Those things are just peer review that you can also say different things about yourself, about your skills or attitudes or skills or affiliations or competencies or previous work. And then the why taxonomy is important here is because we think about this professional profile. Basically, our North Star metric is the value that this profile would give to the verifiers. You don't just want to have the identity, this decentralized identity, you also want it to be useful. So if you're looking for a job, it has to be more valuable than whatever you have on your LinkedIn profile. So that means that data should be verifiable, it should be summarized, it should be just actionable and insightful for the verifiers. And in order to achieve that, we need to solve two we need two layers, essentially. First one is schema, how the data is recorded. And our approach is that we don't believe there would be one single schema for all potential attestations and credentials. There will be a lot, but we want to start with something. And this basic skill schema that's on Ceramic repo is a good start. It's simple enough. It has some most important parts in there, but in future, and something that we're working on already is a schema manager. So for example, if you want to record a POAP, just the fact that you attended a conference, or maybe a kudos that you received from someone, or a course that you completed, or attestation, or I don't know, assessment that you went through. Those are very different data formats, and they require different types of schema, and that's fine. We don't need to make just all data fit the same structure. And then on top of the schema, we're also working on decentralizing, building the taxonomies, and that's what we want to incentivize also with the token. So, for example, if you look at Coordinate today, they already have profiles where you can set up skills, but those skills are very basic and they don't give concrete details about what you know. So, for example, you can have front-end skill, or you can have governance, DAO governance skill. But what does it mean exactly? Because front-end, it can be, I don't know, HTML or React, or maybe it's mobile, maybe it's just different set of technologies, different set of experiences. And if we want to make this data valuable, I think we need to make it as granular and as specific as possible. And as issuers, for example, DAOs, sometimes they just don't have time. Excuse me. Sorry, I had the call. Yeah, cancel it. So sometimes DAOs just don't have a time to create a full skill taxonomy for themselves. So, for example, if a DAO has a bunch of designers and they have, I don't know, 50 different skills or tasks that those designers do, they need to specify exactly, so what is the design process? You need to do customer interviews, you need to do research, you need to work with create the mockups, wireframes. So all those skills can be, and that's what we do already with some of the DAOs. During this week, for example, we help them to specify those skills in very detailed form. But then we also want to help other organizations to reuse this. And that's why you need taxonomy. So if it is gardening or design or front-end engineering or, I don't know, education, any type of job, once someone has put the work into defining what those skills mean, so if it's running customer interviews, it should be criteria saying, what do you do to run customer interview? How can you prove it? And what is the evidence that shows that you actually did it previously? This taxonomy, we want it to be reusable so that other organizations can easily reuse existing skills, or maybe four can alter them a little bit, and they won't need to put a lot of work into designing those. So that's an overview of what we're building. Yeah, hope that is clear. If not clear, happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Stepa. What are the key properties in the basic skills schema? So I heard issuer. What would be the issuers in a decentralized world? Should it be the DAOs or maybe the protocols themselves? Would it be realistic to think that DAOs or protocols would actually issue credentials, as they are the most knowledgeable about that topic?
There's two types of issuance in general. If you look at I don't know, history of digital credentialing, one is direct issuance, where the issuer is someone who is putting their signature onto the credential. So, for example, if I go to I don't know, to Decompass DAO and you give me a credential saying that I participated in this call, and you sign it with your signature. It can be a multi-sig, or maybe someone from core members sign it for me. That is direct form of direct issuance. But this can also, in addition, you can also have something called proxy issuance, where organization directly doesn't do it for different reasons. Maybe they're Web2 organization and they just don't have a wallet or some, I don't know, key pair that they can use to sign it, but they can attest to it, and then another application would sign it for them. So for example, if I go to, I don't know, to a museum or I don't know, any offline event, and they want to issue POAP, well, not POAP, but just a credential, just an attestation, they can do it through another software. For example, on these skills, we have DAOs like OneHive or Prime DAO. They're issuing skill credential to someone who participated in their project. And then it is actually deep skills application that is put in the signature on it. But in the credential, it also says who gave this credential to whom. So it would say it was Prime DAO coordinator, maybe their name or their Ethereum address or their Twitter handle. And in addition to the issuer, you also obviously need to have a holder. So the person who is actually owner of the credential. So it's not like NFT. You don't need ability to make it transferable, because if it is your skill, you shouldn't be able to really give it to someone else. It can be an NFT, of course, you can display it, but it should be non-transferable, and it should have your name or your ID or your pseudonym or your ETH address, something that uniquely identifies you.
Hey, Stepan, very interesting, and I look forward to talking with you guys some more. I did have a kind of a quick question, and maybe this is kind of silly, or you might not know the answer to it, and that's fine. But you mentioned how you could sign for certain people or whatever, but this is an NFT or a non-transferable badge, ERC 1238 or whatever you're using. Like the signature process, is there a way that you've got to verify that through like a ZK proof, or is it using an Ethereum key where like the smart contract can verify that, or do you know like what the verification process, if we wanted to do that on chain, would be? Is that doable right now?
Yes, this is a good question, and I think there's a few answers. One of them is so you can. So first, no technical answer would be that, and I heard from MetaDreamer, and I don't know. I hope he joins one of the next calls. So what he says is it would be good to start with something super easy, super dumb. So zero knowledge, for example, is quite complex technology, and we really want to test product market fit and test UX first before we get into complicated tech stuff. And at least that's our approach. Let's build it simple. But of course, but of course, we also want to build trust. Really, credentialing or skill credentialing, professional credentialing, it is about trust. So the problem with LinkedIn today, or CVs in general, is that you can write whatever you want. Like I can say I'm CEO of Microsoft, and of course nobody would believe it, but LinkedIn doesn't stop me from doing it. And a lot of people actually lie on them, on their resumes. So what we do right now, we actually just use a signature from the wallets, maybe MetaMask or any Web3 wallet, to sign the credential. And all those credentials are stored off chain. So on Ceramic, you can have signed data blobs, or not blobs, but just based on data structure with a signature. So smart contract can, I don't think, so you need some kind of oracle or some way to query it, but I don't think it's a problem. I don't think skill credentials have to be used by smart contracts right away. I think it's more for people to use it, or for like user interface, to show it through the user interface. And also you can have a lot of those. So I don't. So yeah, sorry. just one point I wanted to make is that I don't think there's a need to store that on chain, because first, it's expensive. You might have a lot of those. It might be thousands of credentials, or people have a lot of just complete a lot of work. And second, it is privacy issue. So sometimes you don't want to share something, or maybe you don't want to share it publicly. You only want to share it with your employer, or with a specific DAO, or with a specific person. So customer user has to have this option to control their privacy. I hope this answered the question. I think I ran through it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I definitely agree. You wouldn't want to store certainly the data on chain, but then again, there might be use cases where you'd want to be able to possibly verify it just with a smart like a verifier.sol, how you do when you make a zero knowledge proof with Circum. But you're right. I mean, that gets kind of complicated. So, and you would just be making a call every now and again. You could even batch the data, I was thinking. But that's more down the road. So I just didn't know what y'all were using. But yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
May I have another question? When we're speaking about having a badge or an NFT, do you also want to store in some way the physical copy, like the PDF file or something like that, or you want to completely avoid any physical copies to be stored together with an NFT? What's your take on that?
Do you have a use case in mind?
Well, the simplest use case is the things which you already have right now and you want to digitalize. You essentially have maybe a document lying somewhere around and you want to transfer it to the chain. And then most likely you would be interested to actually have a copy or CAD to link into it, and then it's stored somewhere else. But do you think that would be a necessity for going further on, or just the badge itself would be enough to validate any kind of proof of this document coming again to the validation?
Yeah, so that's I like this question, and I think it is important. So first of all, the way we do it, we don't store any data. As I said, we don't store any data off chain. So it is on Ceramic network, and then you can always mint NFT out of it, or you can create something publicly, something that you can present publicly. And depending on the type of issuance for the credential, it can be something from before. So you can have your paper-based diploma that you scanned or took a picture with. The problem with it will always be self-issued unless we have universities. And that was just a bit of background. 4 years ago, I started a company. It's called Credential. We were working with universities and high schools in Russia, and we were basically helping them to issue digital certificates and diplomas. And although we had some clients, it's still not a widespread technology. So most universities in the world still give out this physical piece of paper, and the only thing you can do with it is you can take a picture or scan it, and then issue it as a credential to yourself. So you're basically self-signing and attaching a picture as an evidence. I think there's a lot of use cases where this will be valuable because, as I said, the value of such protocol or digital credentials in general comes from how useful it is for the verifier. So if my employer that I send this information to, or my future employer that I send this information to, thinks that diploma, university diploma or high school diploma is something that they use in their evaluation process and something that is important for them, then of course it would make sense to have it in the profile. But it would be hard to automate this process because you cannot sign something that was issued before we basically started this system, right? Does it answer your question?
Yeah, well, it definitely gives a perspective. I'm still curious if this approach can completely eliminate the need in the older documents. Essentially, as you're pointing to, for example, university diplomas and everything, I would believe there is still some value in having those also copied to the chain, since then you essentially would need, if you cannot copy or replicate those, you don't need to store them on chain. That's a different topic. But unless you have all the information you need on one system, having two or multiple systems is not preferable in most cases. You rather stick to one and try to bulk all the information there, right?
Yeah, I agree. And this is more of a UX or / product question. For example, if you can import all your data from existing platforms where you have it, like LinkedIn or your CV or picture of your diploma, yes, that makes your profile more richer, and the richer your profile is, the more information. So basically, how we think about it is there are separate data points that you want to collect in the protocol. So you want your POAPs, you want your skill credentials from Deep Skills, you want your Quest attestations from the Compass, you want your I don't know, so source cred, reputation, and also offline docs and so on. So those individual data points, they are valuable by themselves. But what's more valuable is if you build a reputation system on top of it, some kind of summarization or some algorithm that takes into as an input, it takes all those separate data points and then outputs your basically designer score. And those will always be subjective. So that algorithm can be gamed, of course, but the more data point you have, the more trusted your profile would probably be. So I think it's maybe a little bit too early. It's just like we need to solve these simple first problems and have it running with just data that is available in Web3 that are created by DAOs and consumed by other DAOs. That's like immediate use case and immediate pain points that exist. And then I personally believe that like CVs or self-reported data, like LinkedIn profiles, we can do something better. And yeah, I hope we'll have it soon.
Got it.
I'd like to jump in a sec for a sec regarding the signatures. So recently there was discussions around sign-in with Ethereum, and there were some examples of that signature spec, which includes resources and also when the signature has been issued. Do you think it would make sense to follow that standard when it comes to signing credentials, whether it is self-signed or signed by a DAO? So, and also regarding copies, we have a resources field on that signature spec. So the idea would be to have, for example, a CID on the resources, which then that CID would actually resolve to the credential or the copy of it.
Kelly, what just give me a little more background. Is this like a when you talk about the signature, is this like a EIP 712 standard, or is this a separate lesser well-known like credential standard?
Yeah, it's more like a developer guideline rather than a standard implementation within Ethereum. So
Okay.
for now, it's like a spec, and it's used as a guideline for projects using signing.
Right.
And it seems pretty flexible, and I think it might be actually useful for that kind of use case where it's a hybrid mechanism where not everything is on chain. There's signing that comes into play.
Yeah, that sounds cool. Because we'll probably get into it later, and I don't want to bombard Stepa with too many questions, but it was very, very interesting and brings up a lot of challenging problems, as he said, and sometimes it might be better just to focus on the simple ones first before we go down too far down the the rabbit hole, so to speak. But I did have one thing you mentioned, Stepa, and if you don't know the answer, it's fine. You said that you were keeping the data on Ceramic, and you had a use case in mind. I'm not sure if you've implemented it or not, where you would transfer from Ceramic data to occasionally having a user take a portion of that data and from Ceramic and use it to mint an NFT, a non-transferable NFT or a badge. That's actually kind of a use case I've had in mind and trying to figure out as well. So again, not to, if you don't have an answer to it, the technical part, that's fine. But my initial thought was you'd somehow have like an NFT contract, and then as you said, I don't want the guy claiming he's the CEO of Microsoft and that getting through. So I've got some Ceramic data, but that Ceramic data might be controlled by, say, a project stream or a DAO stream. It's not controlled by the user, probably. And then that user wants to take a certain portion of that data and move it to chain. I'd probably need a way to verify on chain at that point that the signed data from Ceramic is legitimate. Does that make sense? So you're not just checking the address of the sender and whatever else, but I've also got to check that the Ceramic data is coming from the legitimate stream ID. So if they claim there's a stream ID or a document ID or something, I could somehow match it up, kind of similar to like an EC recover flow in Ethereum, where if you had an Ethereum address, I could have you sign data and I could use ECDSA or EC recover to verify that it came from that address. Moving from Ceramic might be a little trickier on chain, but that's kind of what I didn't know if you had a solution to that, or you guys had a thought on that, if that makes sense. Like if you could somehow on chain check a Ceramic style, EDD 2259 or whatever it's called, signature, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So by the way, can you hear me now? Can you hear me right now?
Yep.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yep, sounds good.
Yeah, sorry, I just switched my microphone. I think so. We didn't start implementing this, the NFT minting part, and we don't really have a good design how that would work. I think what you mentioned is possible, and yeah. So I don't have exact answer, but probably we need some kind of oracle between Ceramic and that pushes this data to smart contract or some way to connect those two. Yeah, that's interesting. But
Sounds
it can also
good.
be the proxy.
Sorry, I thought you were done. Go ahead.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
I thought you were done, so I was just gonna say, yeah, that the Oracle idea sounds good, but you were mentioning a proxy, so I'm kind of interested in any other ideas. So if you want to go ahead and finish that, that'd be fine.
Yeah, it can be just an application. So it can be a centralized application. How I'm thinking, what could be the first simplest version? Just a centralized application that has access, that basically backend which can verify all that, and then you trust that application, like I don't know, Gitcoin website that would mint NFT for you. And yes, it's a centralized piece that people just need to trust. But at the end of the day, you can issue or you can mint any NFT or you can issue any credential to anyone. So it shouldn't be prohibitory in terms of who can issue what, but there should be, or at least how I'm thinking about it, there should be some scoring mechanism later on. So okay, now you have all these credentials, and if something, I mean, yeah. So if you have some credentials that you issue to yourself, or maybe something that was issued to, I don't know, 1 million people in 1 second, that can be flagged and not not used for reputation score calculation. I think there's just a lot of unknowns before we see actual usage patterns. Like, do people actually want to mint NFTs, or do they want to mint NFT for each credential or for the profile in general? Because if it's one NFT for my whole professional profile that I want to bring to DAO and show like, here all my skills and everything I did in the last 5 years, that's a different story, because you don't like you won't be able to, or it would be very expensive to verify every individual credential if you have thousands or even hundreds of those. So yeah, so I'm still curious to see what would be the use cases for this. I think, yeah, some of these things I mentioned that don't make sense technically, but we need to figure out what's the immediate problem we want to solve.
And also from perspective of issuing something, I'm still coming to this topic of universities issuing some document as like a diploma or something. In this case, if the diploma was already issued to one profile, to one wallet or something, can the same document could be issued more if person has multiple profiles, or we need to also be ensuring that there is only one profile per person registered?
So that's why we need identity. I think identity abstraction, the AD, is very powerful concept, because traditionally, and when you have a diploma, it doesn't say your I don't know address or your passport number, or it just says your name basically. So if you have a credential, another credential from any I don't know, proof of personhood or proof of humanity or Bright ID or any service that just proves your identity, and you can match that with the diploma, then you can have actually, I don't know, 5 different accounts with the same diploma, as long as you can prove that it's you. Or even you don't even need to prove it in the system. You need to prove it to the verifier. So I can, I don't know if that makes sense. So I'm saying that in the verification process, employer, for example, they are interested in the fact that you, person, like Konstantin, you have a diploma from that university, and it's not really important where do you store it or which chain or which system do you use to control that.
I think it is kind of important, because then we could just run into the same problems as in Web2, where people are just making up some fake diplomas, and then years later you hear, hey, the CEO of this company actually didn't graduated from that school because he cheated on the paper. While if there was a copy or the original credential being issued on chain, or at least in a verifiable manner, then yeah, those would become almost impossible.
But I like this idea of also verifying the identity on the first place, because if you want to verify it by request by a person to whom you send all the data, it might become very expensive very soon, because you can send 10 profiles and then he has to validate each and one. And if you can validate initially your like digital identity or match it with your physical identity, then once you see that this person, this profile is validated from the beginning, you kind of give more trust to it, and then maybe the scoring point to a profile makes total sense.
Yeah,
But
the
it's
trust
a good
score.
question. Yeah,
the trust score definitely makes sense. So Gitcoin is actually working on a module called Depop. So the proof of person. No, it's like a person passport. And it's gonna aggregate data from Bright ID, Adena, other of providers, and it's just gonna return a score based on the wallet address. It's not there yet, but I'm looking forward to use that module in any dApp where we would just import and get the trust score for an address. And also when it comes to interoperability, I think that could be a two-way library where the apps using that module could also feed in to the data lake that they're using. So if users are completing quests and earning badges on our platform, having that activity recorded on their side might potentially help to detect Sibyl accounts. Yeah, just a cool idea. So, Jamie, would you like to share what you had in mind? You already talked a bit about it, but would you like to share your screen and go over the slide?
Yeah, sure. And some of it overlaps with the discussion we've already had. Again, thanks, Stepa. Always good to think deeply about some of these things because I'll be honest with you, I'm struggling with some of them and definitely haven't figured them out. All right, so yeah, let me share my screen and then we'll go live. Okay. Oh man, I think Discord just locked up on me. Hold on.
No worries.
All right. Okay, sorry about that, guys. It crashed on me. Let me try that again. Okay. Let me know if you can or can't see this Figma. I know it's not the prettiest one.
I can see it.
Okay. All right. So, and please stop me with any questions. I'm not going to be able to see you unmute because I got this on my full screen to make it bigger, but make it a little bit better. Okay, so kind of this is the flow that I was thinking. So what we've got is a dynamic skills badge. So it kind of went back to what Step was talking about. So you would this is not for everything in the world per se, but at least for the as far as the Decompass DAO with all the projects and skills and the education, it's going to try to store for multiple projects. So what we've already been working on with our DAO contracts is you're going to have projects starting with their Git book, but and the contributors that start with it, and there will be a team, and that team will submit a project. Let's say they're doing a chain link project or whatever. They will get an ID. The initial contributors will get a NFT that just kind of symbolizes and that they can use to show that they were a creator. But this is more the consumer side, so this is the user side. So what will happen is you have all these projects, and each one of these projects are going to have a eventually a safety ID controlled stream to help with write access, but they're going to have a ceramic stream for this project. So project 1, project 2, project 3 would have 3 ceramic streams, and what they're going to use that ceramic stream for is to update with, like, let's say this user completes their quest and has a score of 97 and gets magna cum laude or laude of whatever project 1 wants to do. Project 2 could also update their streams, project 3, etc. So what would the user who's consuming these projects and completing these courses and quests, what would he want? Well, he would have a non-transferable NFT. So it's an ERC 721 because for right now, the NFT DIT process can only do 721s and 1155s. So we would have him mint a non-transferable, so I'd probably lock the transfer function with the before transfer hook. But anyway, that's just within the contract. So it'd be a non-transferable 721, and that would then that contract would store within it either store within it or possibly with the IPFS metadata, however you want to do that, or in both, it would also store the NFT DID stream that the user would control. So this will be a multi-step process because the way Ceramic works currently, if you were to mint, there's going to be a multi-block lag because it's using the subgraph on the chain that you're doing for the 721 contracts. It's using a subgraph, and that usually lags behind. So we'll have to kind of do a user process where either you come back and claim or you do some async retry or whatever, but that's more of a UI UX problem for us to figure out, possibly meta transaction. But anyway, you eventually have the badge updated to where the badge says, what their DID stream is. So what would happen is this is a Ceramic stream, so they could write to it. Only the owner could write to it. And the thought process I had, at least for now, would be within this NFT DID, you keep an array of stream IDs that you claim that you have. So you could claim to, whatever you want, but all you're going to do here is you're going to put the streams that you essentially want me to look up, the public streams that you want me to look up, you're going to put them here. So for instance, if project 1, you tried to complete it, but it was kind of embarrassing, maybe it's not the score you wanted, you just would remove project 1 stream or never upload their stream ID. But if project 2 you wanted to share and project 3 you wanted to share, then you would put their 2 stream IDs here. So obviously eventually we would probably want some encryption here or something so that people couldn't look it up, or these public streams, but for now it would just be kind of public. So my thought process was for this dynamic NFT badge was the use case would be, let's say on our UI, somebody comes to our UI and wants to validate like what skills does this person have, and I want to look at this person's skills. They'd be able to have a user address and or DID. So we kind of actually use the Ceramic DID as well that we have when they go to mint, but either or, the DID is mapped to an array of addresses. So we would use that. Then, of course, you have a token ID that's going to be mapped to the NFT DID from our contract. So we'd be able to get the NFT DID stream. And then what that would do was give you an array of stream IDs. Then you could iterate over those. And that means you could go through every stream ID that they listed. And this one is a little bit tricky because the schemas might not be the same, so we'd have to have some type of uniformity with schemas or some other thing if the schemas weren't uniform. Or possibly the user could put in, like, in addition to the array of stream IDs, maybe they would have to put in what type of parameters they want you to be able to query or whatever. But let's say for now that we have kind of a uniform schema over here. So we would loop over each stream and query the public data corresponding to that user. And then on our front end, so the person who's trying to verify this badge or the skill would then be presented with the data, and they would be then from there able to do whatever they want. And of course, then we could possibly for performance as somebody's stream ID gets updated. Maybe there could be some caching or stuff to increase performance, but this would keep it kind of fully decentralized because the projects have centralized control for now, because the projects would have their own stream, so they would control kind of whatever they want to issue. And then the user would also have some control over what he or she wants to show to people who would come to your UI and want to verify, your claims or whatever you have. And then this would be the process you could go through, like on a UI end, to get that. So yeah, that's kind of what I have so far. But definitely looking for any other ideas, suggestions, things to make it easier, etc.
I have one clarification question, and but by the way, this looks great. But I want to understand better. So if I have a few credentials, or so in a single stream, I might have several tiles. Do I need to put, so would NFT contain all of them, or can I have multiple NFTs for each skill or each attestation separately?
So what I was thinking of so far with the dynamic skills part for the user end. So what you're basically saying is all these different streams or tiles from these different projects, are they going to be separate? Is that what you were asking, or you're saying the user? Yeah. So these will be separate, but that's where I was thinking you would only have one badge, one stream that you control, and then you would put in an array over here. Now, this is a little bit, obviously the UI would need to kind of take help with this because most users aren't, obviously aren't going to need to extract that away. But you would essentially, whatever you want it. So, like, if you claim, yes, I want Project 3, let's say Project 3 was, some team from Chainlink or whatever, this sponsored team from Chainlink did a project, and I want to prove that I passed their course, I passed their courses, and I want to add their stream ID, then basically you would click, like on the UI, I would click, yes, I want to add my Chainlink scores, and the only thing it would do is it would essentially, you're appending to this array the stream ID that would go with Project 3. So it's still one NFT and it's one stream for the user, but he can take off or add on any of these stream IDs. So I could have, 15,000 projects over here, and I've earned 20 badges that I want to share. I would just have an array of 20 badges in this NFT DID stream over here, and then that's what the endpoint over here, the UI could, somebody who's now trying to verify his badge would be able to come. It wouldn't have to be through our UI. Anybody who could read a stream could then go to these public streams and verify, like, yes, he did, or not even verify, just see what the score is, right? Like the score, so or what they actually did within this public stream schema is kind of the idea I'd have.
May I have another question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Continuing to this topic, but won't there be a problem if you don't want to show all the projects you participated in, but you already know the user file or some user credentials? Can't you just go through all public streams and see where he participated regardless of his desire to show it or not?
Yeah, I thought about that as well, but there might be a way to mitigate it if the data on the backend is actually encrypted with our app DID. Then you cannot access the public stream. It's only our app that would be able to do the comparison.
Right.
Yeah, did you have anything else regarding that in mind, Jamie?
Yeah, no. The public stream is just the stream is public. It doesn't necessarily mean that the data would have to be unencrypted, if that makes sense. So, not that I have a great idea of how to decrypt. I mean, as Callie mentioned, we've kind of been talking over some ideas of like what key would you use. For our project, would we have a key? Would this person be able to use their like a JSON Web, the JSON Web JWE DAG protocol somehow? And but then how do you make sure that everybody who wants to be able to decrypt it through our UI can decrypt it? But yeah, if this data was also all public, then you're right. If I know this user's DID, I could just guess and go through projects, and as long as the project has updated it. Now that would be up to the project. So the other thing would be is there could be an interaction here where you would recommend, but you couldn't, where you would recommend the project not put stuff publicly. They could have other streams, but they don't put stuff publicly unless the user kind of approved it. But you wouldn't be able to guarantee the project uphold to that. So even if they did dump it, like maybe some way this public stream needs to be like encrypted somehow and then be able to be decrypted. That process I don't really have a great answer for. But yeah, that would be a problem if you just dumped all of it publicly unencrypted. Then I could just iterate over and see every project they've ever done, even if they didn't want it shared.
And the same topic with encryption. On whom also all the payments link? So who is paying for dumping to the chain essentially.
So yeah, so once Ceramic goes mainnet, and this is the other thing is like, do you want to have some type of subscription model through our UI where I pay it like, so think of like LinkedIn, as Stepa mentioned earlier, right? You would have their free service, which maybe you would have a limit to the number of rights, and then that would come from whoever, right? Maybe even our back end says, okay, we'll pay for 5 Ceramic stream rights free. But you would eventually want to somehow like stop updating for a user and not write to the projects. Wouldn't want to write unless there's some type of like subscription fee or something, because like it will cost money. It hopefully will be very cheap, but it will eventually cost money. Right now it's free, but that's just because there's no token and no mainnet on Ceramic. So you would have to figure out kind of how the payment process goes of, what is the incentive for the project to keep writing, possibly keep updating this for a user over and over and over and over again. What if the user just kind of like spammed, and what rules would they have? Would be up to them, and then who's paying for it. Eventually, if this is decentralized as a DAO, we might even like kind of leave that up to the projects, right? Like this project is going to be signaled, so a project that doesn't want to write, or a project that says I'm not going to write your data unless you pay me a bunch of money, people would either lower Signal or not use. Other projects that are pretty fair, maybe more people would use them or whatever. But yeah, that's also the incentive structure will be a little bit tricky.
And maybe just as an open thought, if user is incentivized to have these badges, maybe he's also incentivized to put some money into showing that it's a valid thing that he himself completed. So in a sense, this also could be a validation, internal validation. And even though it's not self-minted, but it's minted on behalf of a person,
right.
You also put some money into it, like some tokens into it, so that
right.
If someone can prove that this is not valid, he loses the tokens. That kind of mechanism could also be interesting. And then could be kind of a wrapped coin system where while you are showcasing the project, you are putting the money into it, tokens into it. But once you don't want to show it anymore, you can mint it backwards, and the fees you are getting exactly as a.
I see. So it'd be like you have to put up some collateral.
Exactly.
And right, and then it'd almost be like a fraud-proof type, optimistic type roll-up system where if somebody can prove that you were doing something that was not,
exactly.
And then both the user is interested in providing a collateral because he wants to showcase, and then all the fees could only go from this collateral because that's essentially when you start to mint something.
Gotcha.
And a few days ago, we were actually exploring UMA because they have the optimistic rollup. So Jimmy earlier was asking Stepa how we could have a verification on chain, and like most of the options are actually using an oracle. But if we were to use Chainlink on the mainnet, for example, it might be quite costly. So other alternatives such as UMA's optimistic rollup seems interesting in the whole ideas, behind just creating a conflict and saying that this badge is actually a false one, and then there's there's a how do you call it, like a
resolution or
resolution. Exactly, that's the term. There's a resolution that is made by the community through the UMA protocol.
And then it could also reduce the overall load because, well, essentially with any kind of badge, you also don't, at least with the CV type things, you don't really need to showcase projects you did 10 years ago. You want to show the main like 10-ish things, and you can get money back from the older projects and reiterate it for the new ones. So it's not also a huge cost for the user in the end because he can get the funds back once he don't want to show some project anymore.
Yeah. No, those are all great ideas. And I definitely need to mull it over as I don't have an answer for a choice there. We're kind of still thinking about that. So any suggestions like that are really really nice. 'Cause we kind of have to weigh every and all option and think about where to go.
Great. Any other question or something you'd like to talk about on that topic?
So I have a question or maybe just idea, and I'm curious if that makes sense. So if, and regardless of technology, regardless of implementation, can we make the same system, but it is not projects writing into their own streams, but rather issuers or projects writing into some decentralized data storage system owned and fully controlled by the person. So in this case, me as a user, I can fully control what I share, what I don't share. I can accept or reject some of the credentials. If maybe, I don't know, if someone starts spamming, and I can mint, I basically have a list of all like a file or like a folder on computer, and I can select, I don't know, 5 of those that I want to mint as an NFT. Or maybe I can create something that is called Verifiable Presentation. It's a W3C spec, but basically what it says, it's a specification how you can combine many signed JSON files with arbitrary data into a single presentation, and then there's a lot of tooling already developed around it in terms of how to automate it, how to score it, and so on.
Right.
So yeah, does it make sense?
Yeah, one thing I thought of, Stepan, this might be what you're talking about. So, but I actually asked one of the ceramic guys, and I'm going to talk on the community call about half an hour. I'm going to actually be talking with them a little bit. But one thing I thought would be really cool is the it is almost like a merger of safety ID with NFT DID. So basically, like I have an NFT DID, I can control what's written here. But then let's say I want, certain projects could then say, hey, this user has a DID stream, and this DID person, almost like a multi-sig safety ID, is controlled almost like a multi-sig write access, where project 3 goes to write, and that's fine. Project 3 can write if I approve it. So like basically project 3, I could give them like access, and then they could write to my stream, but I could also revoke access because I control it. So if I don't want project 1 or project 2 to be able to write something, but I want project 3, I would be able to have more fine-grained control, and even like project 3 dumps all their data, I only want to share a portion of it, I would be able to edit, but not, like I could hide or encrypt certain things, but I wouldn't be able to edit it, because project 3 wouldn't want me to edit it. They would just want me to be able to, they would just want me to be able to share it. That would be something that's cool, but I don't know of a nice way to do that. But that would be really nice if you had some like shared process where the user has to approve for it to even be published, and then project 3 could write it. But then the only issue right now is I think you either have write access or you don't. So like if project 3 writes into this, let's say instead of stream IDs, if project 3 was to write into it, and then this person, this NFT owner, also had write access, I don't think there's any way to like say, hey, you can't touch project 3's stuff. You know what I mean? So then like what's to stop project 3 writes in some data, and then this person goes, you know what, instead of a score of 70, I want to overwrite it and say I got a score of 100. I guess you could have some dispute resolution process with that, but project 3 would have to like dispute it or something. You know what I mean? Like I don't know of a nice way to do that.
Why is this a problem? Imagine so project 3, they create this new credential, they put some data, and then they put their own signature, and you cannot fake their signature because you just you can change the data, you can mutate the data, but your signature would be invalid against project 3 public key, right?
And also maybe a lazy minting approach could help in this sense. If project 3 creates a lazy minting, and if user wants, he can mint it and claim. If he's not, you just never claim, you just never mint it, and then there is no problem. It's not accessible publicly or something like that.
Right. Yeah, that's possible. The only thing I see, and maybe I'm misunderstanding it, is so let's say project 3 signs data with the key, but I would have to really allow or get basically. I guess it wouldn't be that big a deal, but you would need to pick the data that like you would want to be public, because if project 3 gives you data that's so there's going to have to be interaction there, which is fine, I guess. There will have to be interaction here because project 3 signs data that I don't want public, then I have no way to like change that. Only project 3 could go change that. You know what I mean?
But can you, so to simplify this, so maybe the NFT part can be separated. So for example, yeah, so before even minting NFT and before using the AD NFT method, this is just interaction between someone else issuing or writing you a credential and signing it with your signature. And then that is kept in the stream that only you can read, and then you decide to mint NFT out of it.
Exactly. So it doesn't need to be public unless minted.
Okay. So, right. So if you mint it, I'm just trying to think. So, wouldn't we kind of run into the same issues of like, we're gonna have to call in Oracle to verify or sign we mint, or like where? So the minting process now, where is it? Like where are we pointing to the data? What flow did you have in mind? Still, I don't know. I'm just kind of missing.
So project 3, at least with an approach with lazy minting for me, project 3 prepares the whole NFT structure. It also provides his public key as a proof of actual completion of the course, for example. And then it happens all on the backend, and only the user can see this project as of now. And he can either approve, say, yes, mint it on my behalf, then it's public and then everyone can see it. Or he says, no, that's something not interesting for me. You can keep it in the back. So since it's lazy minted, no one really spent anything. Well, server costs, but who cares? And then it's just stored as a history, but it's never reaching public. And then it's not a problem for approval, because once it's minted, the project 3 or the whole DAO contract in the first place have put its public credentials into the contract.
Would every project then need, like, would you have to do like a proxy and have a minimal proxy and like clone every project as your NFT? Is that kind of like,
that could be one approach, I think,
because you'd have a lot of, like, if a person has 20 different credentials, then now instead of a dynamic skills badge, you've kind of got a skills badge that's for project 2, project 3, 4, project 10. You know what I mean?
Here, I really like the idea before where a person has one NFT, which is extendable to the number of projects he wants to showcase. But
yeah,
maybe I'm missing a point somewhere here.
If all those badges or attestations are in the same stream or in the same, basically, if they are together, you can think of each badge as a like a nested object within a larger JSON, and at the end of the day, you can combine any of those into the resulting NFT when you do the mint. So it can be one or it can be many, and you should have, you as a user, if you have access to all of the badges issued to you, then you can combine them in any form or way to mint an NFT. Is there any problem with that?
Well, I just kind of see, like, so if I want a minute because I need it now, and then I complete 5 more versus later, I'm basically gonna like. You're right. Batching would be nice, or that's kind of what I have is batching it together as like every single project. But I still might have like I have an NFT, and then 6 months later, now I want to update it. So I'm essentially going to mint an NFT every time I want to update it, right?
I think I think that's just a different problem. I know. So my friend is working on this from purely NFT standpoint. So they don't really never touched ceramic or skills or or any of these. But they built a really cool technology and like to proxy NFT. So basically, you have an NFT contract, and then that NFT contract points to another one, and
Right.
the way how you can update NFTs, and they are making like a library, reusable library. So I don't know exactly how that works, but I think they have solution for this, at least from what I heard.
Yeah, they could. I mean, there are upgraded the UUPS protocol minimal, and then there's a minimal clone proxy EIP 1167 that cheaper. It's still you are still going on chain every time you need to update, but it is better than just like doing a full mint of the NFT each time. I was just hoping to try to avoid that at times, but obviously if they've got a great technology that can still batch it and it's relatively cheap and easy. The other thing is, and sometimes with proxies this can be an issue, but I guess it's more of a back end problem. Is it gets a little bit harder to track because you still want, for instance, like I want OpenSea and Rarible to be able to show my badge even if they can't transfer it. And it sometimes gets with proxies. I know sometimes it gets a little complicated to like keep track of, like on marketplaces and stuff. Not that probably matters for most people, but it is kind of a side issue. But yeah, that's more of a tech issue for them. So.
Jamie, in this current architecture, were you thinking of reminting the dynamic skill badge whenever
No,
the
I wanted one
user
mint.
wants it? Oh, only one
Yeah,
mint. Okay.
yeah. I was trying to do one mint and truly make it dynamic as
Yeah.
opposed to proxying or multiple mints. So that's where I run into some problems, is because I'm trying to avoid minting. It's either updating. There's
Right.
two options: updating, the IPFS, which is kind of hard. Do that, or updating the ceramic, or
Yeah.
using events or subgraph, something minting.
So for that use case, what I had in mind was actually just within the metadata, in addition to like the basic metadata, we would have the actual ceramic stream ID for that dynamic profile. And then the change is only happening on that stream ID.
The NFT DID stream ID.
No, the record itself. So yeah, in your case, it's a NFT DID stream ID. Yeah, that's the triangle. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
That's
array
what I
that
had in
contains
mind.
all the stream IDs. Yeah.
Yeah, and you still have the issue that was mentioned. I believe it was. I can't remember now if it was Step or, but you still do have the issue of this will eventually cost money, and how do you incentivize it or whatever. It's relatively cheap, and we could think about that. But yeah, that's kind of what I had in mind. If you had an initial mint, and then you would have some IPFS metadata that goes with it, so that when they put it on OpenSea, there'd be something, a description or whatever. But your main update, the actual dynamic part, is just this NFT DID stream, and that's the only thing that's getting updated. But as mentioned, there are issues that have been brought up. Now you have to go over here public, or do you let somehow, as they write in, do they give a key or sign it, etc. But yeah, I was trying to do just one initial mint to say I own a dynamic skills badge from here, from, in this case, Decompass, DAO, learning, decentralized DAO, Decompass, and then this is what would be actually updated. And you could also revoke and hide and whatever. That was kind of the main thought process there. But I'm open to anything. I mean, proxies, signatures, shared streams. I haven't even got into the fact what about the IPFS metadata? Would you somehow like update the streams or whatever if you had multiple streams? I mean, I'm open for anything. This is what I have right now.
Yeah, good point on also sharing the data. It would be nice to maybe talk a bit around how we can use each other's schemas, and yeah, like how can we promote the fact that, for example, in a project in Gitcoin, there is a recruiter party which aims to disrupt LinkedIn, so developers can fill in their profile, and they also can decide to encrypt their contact information. It might be interesting, for example, in our project, if we could also pull in their previous experiences from that app, or if someone completes a task in deep skills, would be nice to have that reflected on our UI, or if someone completes a quest on Decompass, it might be also interesting for others to display it on their own app. So I think one way to solve this is using the data models, but we would love to hear what you guys think.
I think this is very important point that you brought up, and we're also thinking a lot about this. As I mentioned in the beginning, it probably won't be easy, if possible at all, to get to the same data model, at least initially. We'll have a lot of schemas, and there will be some competition, but over time, maybe it will converge to 5, 6, 10, like for example, attestation, commendation, skill credential, project credential, event, some hackathon, whatever. What we need is generalization of the existing identity protocols, or not even identity protocols, but generalization for all the systems that issue data about people or about professional capabilities of people. Something like a social graph, but for credentials. There's already a lot of data available, and it is not really being reused. So, for example, again, Coordinape, they have all these great data points about people working together across dozens of DAOs, and the end result that would be most valuable would contain some kind of collection of data from all these different sources. Yes, I want to prove that I've worked with a DAO, and I have Coordinape and Deep Skills and SourceCred for different aspects of that work. I also want to prove that I completed some quests. I went through certification program. I went through education program at, I don't know, Bitcoin Kernel or Build Space or some other DAO. And probably, so I don't think NFT is a solution for this. NFT is a solution to actually display it, yeah. So honestly, I don't know what is the right solution, but I think it's needed. Otherwise, it will be too fragmented, and it will be just a harder user experience compared to LinkedIn, where you can just write it on a single page and send it to someone.
Right. And also there's like cool projects in Web3 like Rabbit Hole. They are also thinking of skills and quests and all that. But unfortunately, one, they are closed source, and two, they have a centralized DB. So how, like, it's unfortunate, but I cannot actually get the quest completed from Rabbit Hole, while it would be really great if we could just share the same quest or a badge schema, and you can complete a quest in different dApps, and then you can aggregate those completions in one profile.
Yeah, those are great points, guys.
One of the action items here is still planned, But what we want to do is to just have a chat and talk to all existing applications that people already use to get credentials, and specifically all the applications that are used in DAOs to manage work, and basically have this discussion with everybody. What is the least common denominator? What is the easiest common technology to collect existing data points about users in the same format? So it can be variable between applications. I know this already happened. I'm like, yeah, I forgot. There's one tool that like manages. You can create circles within DAO, like okay,
or something.
yeah, I will find the name, but basically they have interoperability between Coordinate and this tool that helps to form teams for DAO. So it is not, it's like like a project management tool. The good part about it, so if you have certain profile attributes in Coordinate, then it will automatically get pulled into this system. I think it's called Betala or something like this. No.
Yeah, that's awesome. But I'm not sure if the data actually lives on Ceramic, or maybe that Coordinate is actually providing
No,
a
it's not
centralized
on Ceramic.
API. Yeah, that's the thing. So I talked about using Ceramic potentially with Coordinate. They definitely are exploring the idea of decentralized identities and skills and whatnot. Maybe that's what's needed, is actually a push from the community to make use of the Ceramic basic profile so that they get familiar with Ceramic, and then slowly but surely we can just advocate using schemas and then sharing definitions so that we can read and potentially in like collaboration use cases even maybe write on the same definitions.
Yeah, and then some of those exist, like basic profile, for example, that is used by many applications. I think the first step should be really the minimum viable proof of concept. Even before we get to minting of the NFT, just proof this proof of this interoperability and understanding what the actual UX looks like might be that kind of push.
I would also point, or would be interested in actual validation of the user need for something like that, because in the end we see that from the LinkedIn, no one also really cares if the thing you entered is valid or not. It anyway is getting approved afterwards through a different process, so no one takes 100% serious everything you write on a CV or LinkedIn. So here, initial validation, or that's good to think from the beginning, though maybe for some cases there is no need for validation at all. You just can. So that it's again a question to the trust score, but generally I would say that if there is a strong need from a user in the first place, then it's easy to build a solution for the user. But if we don't have the strong user need in the first place, then it's kind of just pushing out the idea, which is maybe not so relevant. So I would just double check on that.
Yeah, like the main use case I see is especially in the crypto space when there's a new project that pops up and they publish a website with their roadmap and all that. And then in the team, you see ex Google, ex Microsoft with a link to LinkedIn. But that profile is actually made up. So it would be nice if you could actually prevent that by providing verifiable information, but that's an edge case. Maybe the need is not there.
And if we design the whole process simple for the validation, then it would be super good, because that's the main use cases you have just explained.
Right. And yesterday I was reading on SourceSquad's algorithm. In their doc, they are stating that, for example, if we take a GitHub repo and we just watch for comments on that GitHub pull request, then the comments might not actually be significant or relevant. But the reactions to that comment, like a like or a heart, might actually mean something. So for like let's say the job industry, or if you have a CV, it's already a built-in feature on LinkedIn. You can reference people for their work. So something similar in Web3 might also have a bigger rate, where I can signal on one of your badges because I worked with you. Yeah, I think human evaluation actually might have a place in such a process.
Yeah, and this is actually exactly how I think about it. I have a diagram somewhere. Basically, when we designed the professional identity system, and I can share a screen for a second just to show it. Tab, this one. I was just, is it, sorry, I think I need to do it again. Basically, we're discussing the technical side of things, but also if we think from the product standpoint or from end user standpoint, and by the end user, I mean actually verifier, because they are the one who is getting value out of it. So there's a customer-centric identity, basically the ID that controls everything. And then if you're verifying somebody, so the value for the holder of the identity for this guy is he get access to something. So if he starts a new protocol, maybe he wants to prove his previous affiliations to raise more money. Maybe he needs it to vote in a DAO with to participate in meritocratic voting. Maybe he just wants to find a job, or maybe he's a freelancer and wants to find new content, new clients. And all of those guys that I mentioned, they are verifiers. So for the verifier, from verifier standpoint, I'm interested in two things. At least my current thinking is, first is skills, and second is affiliations. Skills is, you can think of it as capabilities graph. So what are different sources of that prove how good I am at doing something. And affiliations is social graph, because sometimes it is not about a skill, but just the fact that you, for example, you can have a skill of design, and then doing design for curve finance, it is something specific. So designing DeFi apps is very different from, I don't know, designing mobile games. Or maybe Vitalik is following you on Twitter, or Andrei following you on Twitter, and Vitalik gave you like a source credit token or coordinate token. So that means a lot, even though none of these things directly represents any skill or anything, any hard skill at least. So yeah, so then the skills themselves, they can be divided into these self-attested, so you can have design badge from LinkedIn or from your profile. You can have peer assessed, so deep skills coordinate, or it can be issued by authority. And then affiliations, they are projects that you worked on, organizations, which is just larger projects or collection of projects, and people directly who you know or who gave you some social proof about your skills. So that's an overview. I think that is similar to what we just discussed, and I wanted to show this.
Thanks for sharing, Stefan. Awesome. It's also pretty close to what we are doing on the Compass. So we didn't make a distinction between a project and an org. Instead, you just have a project and a possibility to have a parent ID. So, but it's the same, yeah. A project can have multiple projects within it, and then there's the peoples which are represented within each squad. So a squad is like a team, and when the project is created, an NFT is minted to represent that this address actually belongs to that project.
Yeah. Thanks again, Stepa, for sharing, and Constantine and everyone for your thoughts. I'm actually going to have to step off here in a minute, but feel free to DM me. I got to go to the ceramic call, Callie. So
Nice.
I'll be sharing that and getting even more feedback, and actually sharing some of the good feedback I got from Constantine and Stepa today. So yeah, thanks again, guys, and I'm sure I'll be talking to you all more later.
Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Have a good one.
Yeah. You too.
I do need to drop as well right now.
Yeah, I guess we can cut it off. I think we covered all the topics on the agenda. Thanks for your time, guys. Thanks, Stepa, for your great insights, and Constantine as well. Really grateful to have you here.
And yeah, have a great day then.
Yeah, thank you. Let's plan for the next meeting. Maybe we can have some more practical action items.
Yeah.
Because I think the overall ideas are very aligned, and it would be great to think maybe we can hack some POC to actually prove it and start customer validation.
Definitely. Awesome. Talk to you soon, guys. Let's keep in touch, and let's write down those action items.